Well, hello, everybody, and thank you all very much for attending. We had over 100 last time registered, but the recording got passed along to 6,500 people. So no pressure, guys, that there's potentially thousands of folks watching us here. And I'm not saying I'm nervous, but I definitely did prep a little more, knowing that there might be thousands of folks listening to us. But I really did like the last session, and I'm really excited about this one on leading indicators. For those of you who weren't here for the last session, it was on complacency and COVID. It's not over till it's over. And we got to hear from all of the panelists in terms of what the companies were doing, what the leadership at their companies was doing in terms of communication. Some great ideas there as well. Dr. Wada and Abdullah also talked a bit about what the governments did in terms of leadership as well in the Middle East, which I thought was also really interesting. This one is on leading indicators. What would you rely on enough to make a significant change? The next one is on zero harm. Should you have zero harm in your mission statement or not? And if you've been out to the conferences, you can hear lots of academics or consultants, if you will, talking about that you should or shouldn't have zero harm in your mission statement. But eventually somebody has to decide, and that's basically what these panelists are here for. They're the ones who actually have to make these decisions. The very last session in the series of 4 is on felt leadership. In other words, can the message from the very top level make it right down to the shop floor or to the worker? I think we're all in agreement that leadership is important, but can it actually make it right down to that level? So I hope you can join us for all of the sessions. But this one I'm really interested in. I have done this session with Dr. Wada in India for an expert panel there. I've also done this with the expert panelists in North America. The findings were very surprising, everybody. And we didn't actually expect what came out of it. So like I said, I'm very, very interested in what's gonna come out of tonight's. Now, Dr. Wada brought the panelists here, but I met Dr. Wada first at a conference in Prague, and he's got a lot of credentials. I think 2 PhDs. When I saw all of the credentials on the screen, I just about walked out of the room. But he's really interesting and really funny, and I stayed for the whole session. Saw him again at a panel. We were both on an expert panel at a gas association conference in Delhi in India, and then again at a conference in Kuwait just a month later. So I asked him if he'd help me with the expert panels in India. He's also helped me in North America and also with HSE Global Conference in the UK coming up at the end of the month. So I'm going to let Dr. Wada introduce the panelists again. But just for those of you who didn't get a chance to, if you will, read the blurb, we all know some leading indicators are more reliable than others. Unfortunately, none of them are perfect. Near-miss reports are valuable simply in terms of preventing the next one, but the number of near-miss reports being turned in is also important. Observations can be a good leading indicator for problem areas or behaviors, but only if they are quality observations. Hazard reports can also be reliable, and in some cases, audits can be used as leading indicators. However, a low quality audit that provides a favorable score could also lead to a false sense of security. But in the end, as I said before, someone has to decide what will this organization or corporation believe in enough to change course or to make a significant change. And so, as I said earlier, the purpose of this panel is to let you all hear from the people who actually have to make these decisions. So, Dr. Watt, if you could, perhaps you could introduce the panelists, and then I'll get on with the questions just as quickly as I can.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening for those who are dialing in from the States or from Europe. And good night for those who are dialing in maybe from the Far East. Anyway, let me introduce my fellow colleagues here. We'll start with Abdullah Marzouqi. He is an independent regional HSE expert. Until very recently, he was the executive director for HSE for the ADNOC Group in the UAE. He is really a wealth of knowledge, and I've known Abdullah for nearly now 25 years, and consider him one of my mentors. He was his last posting in ADNOC was senior vice president of Group HSE, and has about more than 40 years of experience in several areas of oil and gas industries, upstream, downstream, and even sales and retail. He's a lot of highlights for him, which we won't go into, but he's been involved in developing policies, HSE management systems, codes of practice, and standards and procedures over the years. But he was very much involved also and very instrumental in developing the competency assurance management system for ADNOC and the development of the competency assurance CAMS, or what is known as the CAMS system. He's also served as the chairman of the SPE for HSE international conferences, the first sustainability conference here in the UAE, and also many different other conferences. He's been involved in conferences run by ADIPEC, HSE, IOSH, NEOS, and various other organizations. And he also served as 2 years as the chairman for the Regional Clean Seas Organization, REXO, before retiring from ADNOC. So welcome to Abdullah with us today. Always nice to see you, Bujasim. Next, Mr. Ahmed Khalil Ibrahim is the director for EHS for the Bahrain Petroleum Company, BAPCO, and is the director of the EHS on the BAPCO refinery expansion project. And he is an international HSE expert. I've also known Ahmed for more than 20 years, and we have been around the circuit speaking at various conferences together. So currently the director, but he's also involved as a member of the Bahrain Health and Safety Council, the Bahrain Health and Safety Standardization Committee, and the Society of Petroleum Engineers SPEHS Committee, the BAPCO Environment and Health and Safety Committee. He is a board member with the R.W. Campbell Institute in the US and the GCC National Companies EHS Committee. Also was working with the SPE HSE committee when the SPE conference was in Bahrain. He chairs the committee responsible for reviewing and update Bahrain's HNS standards at the government level. He has many accreditations in BSM, HAZOP, taproot investigations, and other systems. He was instrumental in the development of also the HSE competency assurance systems and trade testing protocols in BAPCO, and has been personally involved in developing systems, competency dictionaries, and conducted more than 200 competency-based interviews in his career. He is a real expert also in emergency response and crisis management, and I say that both from a qualification perspective, but from many experiences that he's had, fortunately or unfortunately, as he puts it, having to deal with these incidents in the refinery. Then, last but not least, Mr. Salman Abdullah. He's the executive vice president of the Emirates Global Aluminium, currently a doctor of business administration scholar, the HSE expert, and he brings a wealth of experience in designing, building, operating, and maintaining large industrial plants. Salman joined Dubal in '84 as an engineering apprentice. He has about 35 years plus of experience in this area. He has also led the startup and stabilization of the phase 1, phase 2 of the Emirates Aluminium Global Company Limited, and has worked on many different things. His current research is very, very interesting. It's in his doctoral work. Anyway, he was appointed also chairman of the Safety and Environment Committee in the Gulf Aluminium Council in 2017. So he's a prolific speaker, enjoys mentoring young students and professionals, and is an academician with a passion for the aluminum industrial sector. So welcome to all my colleagues here. Real pleasure to have you. And again, I think the subject, as Larry said, is a really, really interesting subject. And hopefully we'll also get Larry to answer the last question that we couldn't answer in the last webinar if we get some time regarding the changes that will be taking place. Anyway, back to you, Larry.
Well, go for it. Go for it right now, Wada. Can you remember the question, and we could start with it, or maybe deal with it quickly, and that way I don't have to remember and come back to it.
Yeah, no, I think the question was quite profound. He, the person who posed the question said, now with this COVID-19, is there going to be a permanent change? I mean, given that this is going to last for a while, but afterwards, where did he see the experts and the panelists here believe that there was going to be, fundamental changes in the way that we approach HSE? That's if I remember the gist of it.
Yeah. So, well, no. We talked. I don't know if you remember, Walter. We also talked about that a bit. I think in one of the European ones where. The emphasis on would there actually be now a more permanent shift towards health as opposed to more, the emphasis being much more on safety, and would that extend to mental health, which I will say in Europe they are making more inroads in that than I certainly see in North America. Anyhow, what would you say to that, Abdullah? Or go ahead. What?
No, I was gonna ask Ahmed Khalil first, because I know that they had built an extensive occupational health and safety sort of practice within Babco, and they've been doing a lot of stuff on employee wellness and welfare. I know the chief medical officer personally who they've been dealing with. So Ahmed, what are your views on that?
Oh, I mean, as you know, we've done a lot of work around COVID-19, and we established a crisis management team since probably February, March time. And this crisis management team meets twice a week. And one of the issues we are trying to deal with at the moment is the mental health. To the extent that actually we've hired a full-time doctor at Awali Hospital to assist people with mental issues. She's a very experienced individual in psychology, and she's quite good in what she's doing. And to the extent we have extended our services to the contractors and subcontractors, because contractors and subcontractors don't have such access to such expertise or experienced individuals. So we've extended the service even to contractors and subcontractors. Well-being and wellness is an extremely important part of health and safety. They can't separate the two. And our emphasis for the last 2-3 years has been wellness and well-being of our employees. And with the project in particular, actually I have a small section that is called welfare, employees welfare section, which has a specialist and two individuals helping with this. The reason being is, it's part of the lender's requirement, but secondly, it is seen as an important function of the health and safety. So yes, emphasis not only in safety, but emphasis also on the well-being of our employees and contractors. And mental health during the COVID-19 is becoming more important as well, with people being stressed out and having family issues and having to deal sometime with people who might have died in their families, or people who might have been impacted either financially or mentally. So yes, we are giving this an important emphasis in the last probably 2-3-4 months. As I said, to the extent we have hospital, our company has a fully fledged hospital, by the way, and we have doctors. We have dozens of doctors in different specializations. So we've added the psychologist as part of the hospital team, and he's accessible to anyone who wants to go and talk to him.
Okay.
Thanks.
Abdullah, what do you think it'll be like permanent though? Like, do you think because of COVID that the health and safety community will finally say, look, there's going to be another epidemic in 5 to 10 years, probably closer to 5 than 10. As Anthony at Procter & Gamble said to me, Larry, somebody's going to eat a bat somewhere that's eaten that, it's going to happen, right? He's been through, he said, this is my 6th epidemic, 7th now or whatever. He said, it's going to happen, but typically there's a great reluctance to believe it's going to happen again until it actually happens. So do you think the health and safety community will finally be prepared for the next one?
Larry, I think this COVID-19 has taught us a lot. COVID-19 has been a game changer, both the way we think, the way we look at our lifestyle, the way we look at HSE, the way we look at our business. So this has been a journey, painful journey. However, there has been lots of learning. And listening to many experts, this is not going to be the last pandemic that is going to hit us. The way we are managing the environment, the way we are technologically, the way we are improving, we are getting smarter, and at the same time, we are opening lots of barriers that we're going to be vulnerable to. So, the good news is now this pandemic had brought the entire community and every part of the world, every country together, basically to find a remedy for it. And I think that unification, looking at it as a common enemy, I think that will bring a lot of good things to the world and to the individuals. And my hope is once the vaccine is out, every individual in every corner of the world, they get an opportunity to be really vaccinated.
Uh-oh. I just couldn't hear the last sentence, Abdullah. Can you repeat yourself again, see?
Abdullah, can you hear us?
We can't hear you, Abdullah.
Okay, well, tell you what, I was just gonna move on to Salman anyhow. So hopefully, we'll get Abdullah back. So with COVID, do you think, Salman, do you think the leadership? I mean, almost everywhere, the experts, all over the world at these different panels have said that their leadership groups have stepped up. They've been very happy, very pleasantly surprised that some of them even said as much as I didn't know they had it in them. But do you think that is going to stay with us after COVID? Do you think that the good communication, the more the more constant communication from leadership? Do you think that's going to continue, or do you think it's going to be back to business, back to normal?
Yeah, thank you, Larry, for that question. It's a very, very important point. I'll just refer to a Fortune 500 survey that was done, and exactly the same question was asked from the Fortune 500 CEOs. And more than 90% of the CEOs was asked, when do you think we will go back to the normality? And most of them said never. And it's not necessarily a bad thing in terms of it's taught all of us a lot, as Abdullah has mentioned, but it's also opened up opportunities. Now, for example, we are an industrial plant based in Jebel Ali and also in Abu Dhabi. And it was always a challenge for us to recruit people from Northern Emirates. What this pandemic has shown us that there is a large cohort, a large number of jobs that can be done from home very, very efficiently. And suddenly for the businesses, it has opened up far more opportunities for recruiting people without necessarily having to ask them to move where they live. So this is one great learning for the businesses. And definitely from the leadership, it has really shaken up the leadership core, and you can become very, very famous, maybe unpopular very quickly if you're not seen as having taken all the correct mitigation actions and have not seen through and announced victory too early, because it's such a miserable bug. It will come back and teach you a lesson very, very quickly. So yes, I think the leadership will be under scrutiny, but going forward, it has changed the way we work. It's the way our societies will go into the future. There's no going back to pre-COVID status. That's
Yeah,
my
no,
view.
I hope you're right, and I hope some of the good, like some of the good things will actually remain after COVID. One of the European webinars that we did was just around that whole theme, which is we've seen some good things. How do we keep, how do we keep some of the good stuff and not let go of it? So Wada, that was great. I'd forgotten about that question. So thanks very much for bringing that up again, you guys. And I mean, I know the first session was complacency in COVID. It's not over till it's over. But the reality is, we could start off with a little update on COVID like every 3 weeks, because things have been changing, right? Where I live, not for the better. We've had the worst 2 weeks since March here, but that's up to something like 300 cases. If you talk to Ed Stevens, who lives in Florida, they're happy that they got under 5,000 for the first week in the history of, since March. So, I guess it's all a bit relative too, as well. The folks in India not doing great, but it's certainly awfully crowded there. So, I was worried about India right from the get-go in the Philippines. Anyhow, guys, I really do want to get onto this with the leading indicators. So, Salman, look, let me just start with you. And again, these are just sort of quick, everybody. I just want to know which leading indicators you think are the most reliable, or which ones in combination would be enough to initiate a significant change within your organization. And then I'm going to ask Ahmed, and then I'm going to ask Abdullah. So we just want to start off quickly, 1 to 2 minutes each, gentlemen, and Wada, with, which ones do you like, of all the leading indicators, the usual suspects, as I call them: near miss, hazard IDs, audits, inspections, walkarounds, observations, management visits, pre-shift briefings, risk assessments. You can add to the list if you feel like it, but which ones do you think are the most reliable, and which ones would cause you to make initiate a significant change? So Salman, let me start with you, and then I said, I'll move on to Ahmed and Abdullah.
Thank you, Larry. So just before I answer, I mean, you've listed a complete set of leading indicators, so we can just pick and choose. But before we say which ones work and which ones don't work, there is a structural issue. And for me, as me being, I'm studying leadership impact on organizational performance. If in an organization, safety and well-being is not discussed together with productivity and profitability, then that organization can have as many leading indicators as they like. The impact and the benefit of it will be minimum. The first telltale sign I would look for in any organization is just look at the organizational chart and see what's the power distance between the top guy and the people who are the advisors in the safety and health well-being. And if you see there are a couple of steps down, really you can have as many indicators as you like. Now, having crossed that bridge, having got the context right, that to the leadership, these are important elements, my personal experience demonstrates it's not the audits only, or the number of audits, or how many non-conformances or gaps you find, but how quickly does the organization close them in a meaningful manner. So that closure rate demonstrates to me how seriously the organization takes those gaps and non-conformances. So it's not the indicator themselves, but how quickly do you address them? You talked about
Oh, man, Solomon, I really like the closure rate. That is I have not heard that yet so far, and I really I think that's a really good idea. You know,
yeah.
how fast are you getting it fixed? That's a really good leading indicator for sure. I never thought of that one. What else? Anything else you really like? You know,
yeah.
any other?
Same goes for near misses. People can generate thousands for organization our size. You can generate thousands and thousands of near misses, but how do you very quickly classify them and then make sure they're closed out? So again, the closure rate in near misses, again, the inspection, the management walkabouts, the management can go and identify and engage with people about what's the outcome and how quickly do you address the items which have been identified. So overall, the closure rate when a gap is identified.
Well, that very good. I really like. Thank you so much for that answer, Salman. Okay. So Ahmed, which ones? I almost feel like it's the beginning. You know, the beginning of football season. I'm asking, you know, which teams do you like the best this year? You know, but which leading indicators? You know, which leading indicators are your favorites, or which ones do you think were the most reliable?
Well, it all depends on the organization needs and the way the business is being managed in the organization. But just leading from Salman's discussion, I think the effectiveness of those KPIs or leading indicators is, to me, is far more important than the KPIs themselves. How effective those KPIs or those leading indicators of the organization? Is it actually giving or adding value to the organization, or just a number they utilize for monitoring their performance? They have to look at the effectiveness of those KPIs and how they are contributing to the enhancement of health and safety in the organization. So we divide the indicators into two parts: personal safety and process safety. And I think it's important when you are articulating leading indicators or even lagging indicators, you look at both process safety and personal safety, and you have to divide them into those categories. Otherwise, you will be focusing in one thing and, you know, ignoring something which is extremely important which is the process safety. As an example, relay valves is one thing that you would proactively monitor on a regular basis, whether those relay valves, as an example, are checked on a regular basis or not. The reliability issue in the plant, as an example, is another indicator that you will look at on a regular basis. So it's not about only management visibility or the number of action items being closed or the number of management of change items that are overdue or the number of investigations or, you know, the leadership visibility. But there are a host of leading indicators, and those leading indicators have to be tailored to suit the organization itself, to see the needs of this organization and the focus. And those are, by the way, are the leading and lagging indicators ought to be reviewed on a regular basis to see whether if they are still valid, whether if they are still contributing to the organization. So I like most of those leading indicators, but, you know, focusing on the actual closure of the action items of those indicators is extremely important, because if you have incidents being reported and if you have issues that are being highlighted from major tools, if they are not closed on a timely basis and they are not being communicated to the whole workforce in the organization, you might be losing connection, or you might not be able to communicate effectively with the whole organization. So whatever you do around leading and lagging indicators, they have to be meaningful, they have to be clear, they have to be simple, but they also have to contribute to the whole organization, enhancement of health and safety, whether it be process safety or personal safety. So the effectiveness part, to me, is the most crucial part of those indicators.
Well, and man, I think also a really good point about the separating the two, but the process safety and the personal safety. Now, obviously, some organizations, there's not a lot of process safety compared to if you're, say, oil and gas or the chemical industry, something like that. So, but obviously, if you are in the process industry and you're using stuff that can blow up or is very toxic, you don't want to be treating every near miss report or every hazard ID or every leaky valve the same. It's not exactly the same thing, right? I mean, I can remember when I was working with the largest milk dairy cheese company in Canada, and I said, I was talking to the maintenance department, and I said, if you guys worked at it, you could probably blow this place to smithereens. And some of them said, yeah, we've thought about it a few times too, Larry. But if you're in a refinery, you don't really have to work at it very hard. You just need a release and a spark, and you can be good to go, right? So I think that's a really important thing for anybody in the process industries to make sure, as a minimum, you're separating out personal safety and process safety, right? Because
one last thing, Larry, if I may, we have established a very elaborate dashboard, and this dashboard is accessible to every individual in the organization. They can see it actually minute by minute, the status of those KPI, be it leading or lagging indicators. They also can monitor the action plan, the action items, to see how quick do we close those action items, and we assign a date and assign a responsible person for them, coming from some of those leading indicators or even coming from some of those lagging indicators. So transparency is important. Accessibility by the whole organization to those indicators is another important thing. So yes, I think what we have seen our dashboard. It is one of the most elaborate dashboard you will ever see anywhere else in the world.
Well, no, but the idea of making it transparent is also really good. Also really good, man. Abdullah, let me get to you, and then to Dr. Wada. What's your favorite ball team this year? I guess. What are the leading indicators that you relied on the most, or that you thought were the most important?
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. And again, it is a great pleasure to really be with you guys and share some of our experience and some of the best practices with you. Let me find, first, I think we should define what is the proactive or leading indicators are. Usually we get excited, set up a bunch of KPIs and all this thing, and sometimes that does not bring the result that you're looking for. So the key indicator, it should be basically, it should offer an organization the things that are not working well and the things that are working well. And so it gives an organization a chance basically to take a corrective action before it becomes an incident or injuries. So we need to make sure that our KPI, being a leading KPI or lagging KPI, it should be well connected to a strategy of the organization. Whether you are in banking, whether you are in oil and gas, whether you're in manufacturing, so you have to link it crystal clearly with your strategy, vision, and mission of the organization. Now, I think Ahmed Khalil has nicely said, we have to look at both process safety and the personal safety. So the indicators, whatever we set, it should not be. Unfortunately, I have seen my own experience. It becomes sometimes a lot of paperwork work exercise, and that's what you want to eliminate. So for me, I look at the people, basically training and competency of the key positions that what you have, critical positions. We have to look at effective risk management, both in terms of the enterprise and also in terms of the process risk management. So you have to have a portfolio of all your risk, and you have to manage them. You have to manage them properly. Engagement of people that we have discussed, yes. The engagement of top management, I can share with you one of the example when we created management site visits or high profile tours. We had engaged the HR, the finance, the legal, supply chain, you name it. They were some of the people that they had never seen the fields before. Those guys going out to the fields, talking to the people, what kind of a spare they need, what kind of maintenance is required, if the project is functioning properly, if the operation is functioning properly. Those are the ones that they will understand the business much better, and they can resolve the issues right on the spot. Now, looking at the competency of the people, every activities that you do, even sweeping the floor, if you do the things properly, effectively supervise it, then you can do the things very safely and without damaging anything, or without basically compromising the quality of the work you're supposed to do. Myself, I've been engaged in a lot of incident investigation, lots of root cause of it, because either there was a competency issues, or basically people are taking shortcuts. So those are some of the indicators that we need to really embed. And Ahmed Khalil, and I think the rest, they talk about the asset integrity, process safety. Yes, definitely. You cannot compromise on your preventive maintenance. You cannot compromise on asset integrity. You cannot compromise in rehabilitating or replacing your old equipment. So the indicators, being it leading or lacking indicators, to me is a spin-off or the byproduct of the good things that you do in your operation, in your fields, in your manufacturing, in your warehouse, in your workshop. So at the end of the day, competency of the people and making sure people are happy, and people that they do the things right, and people they work from their heart. So for me, you have to create that kind of culture within the organization, really, to give you a proper results of the vision and the strategy that what you have, or the KPIs that you're setting for the organization.
Abdul, that was so interesting that as a leading indicator, looking at training and competency and risk management capability skill within that group is a reliable leading indicator. I mean, getting right down to the core. The other thing you mentioned, I've heard at every one of the other expert panels, and that is the site visit. You know, get there, out there with your ear to the rail, or get to talk to people out there who have their heads screwed on straight, and have their ear to the rail. And that is that's what the people in North America, surprisingly enough, were telling us, that the most reliable leading indicators for them were actually going out and talking to people. And then they would go and look at the reports and the graphs and the spreadsheets. And if that all was congruent, that would be great. But they'd go out and talk to the people first. And sounds like you're saying, go out and look and see whether the people had any training. Go see if there's any competence right at that ground level. That's a tremendous leading indicator. Dr. Wada, I want to give you a little more time here.
And one thing, Larry, sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Larry, let me add one more thing. I think I missed out. Today, the way the technology is moving forward, and I think we our reliance on technologies, because this new generation and the future generation, they are so smart and they are so technology oriented. So we want to really deploy the technologies, being it artificial intelligence, being it CCTV cameras, being what have you. So we need to really focus on those technologies and deploy them in our facilities, in our workplace, to make sure that we give the right tools to the workforce which we have trained them so they can use them properly.
Yeah, I think certainly, when I look at some of the things they're developing now that can even, sense fatigue, and like, for instance, big piece mobile equipment operator, they can actually sense fatigue in the eyes. Some of those things obviously are going to be a tremendous asset going forward. Dr. Wada, what leading indicators do you like, as a practitioner? Obviously, you've been involved in health and safety at Enoch for a while, but also what you've also heard from, if you will, the community out there, especially the directors and, the people that you work with, in your consulting business, sort of, at that, large, huge company board of director level, where you're sort of trying to get them to make the right decisions and things like that. What leading indicators do you like? What ones do you talk to them about? And which ones, just ground level, when you were in health and safety, did you like the most at Enoch?
Well, maybe I'll answer that question a little bit differently, Larry, if I may, because I think the gentlemen before me have already actually explained the question of the leading indicators. The leading indicators are the usual list that you listed out at the beginning before we started this round of question. But what I would like to say, and really, when we talk about leaders of organizations, I think the problem is, first of all, what is the definition of the leading indicator? And it depends, because different industries define it a bit differently. So what we call a near miss, and what we measure as a near miss, for example, is a favorite, a leading indicator, for example, in oil and gas, or in the process industries, in most industries actually. But if you go to some other industry, like, for example, the aviation industry, a near miss incident is not considered a leading indicator. It is considered a lagging indicator, because even if a near miss, so for example,
it happened. It already happened. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's already happened. No accident, no damage, no loss has been a result of this. But actually, for example, two aircraft, coming to land with a separation distance of, say, 2 nautical miles, and they close that gap to 1.8, 1.7 nautical miles. That is immediately logged as an incident and not a near miss, although nothing has actually happened. But because you've actually crossed that safety cushion, immediately that's defined as a lagging indicator, not leading indicator. So, and I think that this is very, very fundamental to our understanding of, and our approach and our philosophy towards how to manage loss. Because if we don't, our tolerance level to for example, that closing of the safety gap between two aircraft, because it's such a critical thing, that if these two aircraft ever to crash, it would be just an absolute disaster, So what we do is, our leading and lagging indicator, and our definition of it, what is a leading and lagging indicator, should depend really on the criticality of the loss. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and as Ahmed and Abdullah spoke about, the leading and lagging indicators, many incidents that we see, and which I've been involved in investigating or reading about, obviously reading about a lot more than I've investigated, but I've investigated, quite a few. I've been involved in investigation teams for the past 20 years. Most of the time, an incident occurs, it manifests itself as a safety incident. It's defined as a safety incident, so immediately becomes a lagging indicator, because some fire happened, or some loss happened, someone got injured, etc. But the reality is that it only manifested itself as a safety incident. The reality is that the root causes that when we study them, they are because of process safety management, lacking indicators like asset integrity was not up to the mark, or there wasn't enough people, or there wasn't enough competency in the people that you've got. So the root cause is something different. Now, when we talk about, and you asked me about directors and senior managers in organizations and executives, what I think with many senior leaders, what we have as HSE practitioners probably failed to do is to really talk about, the reality and the causality between these root causes and the actual incidents happening in the end. So understanding how these barriers have failed, because when we look at the bow tie, for example, the left-hand side of the bow tie is looking at preventing the incident, but this is where we're measuring actually the lagging, leading indicators, right? So if these barriers are failing, so causality is very important. So Salman made a very good point about measuring the closeout rate of these issues which are being raised and actually addressing them. Does three things, and sharing that, as Ahmed said, this transparency is very important. But internally and externally, leaders of organizations create that credibility, the credibility that we're measuring, but we're doing something about what we're measuring, right? We're not just forgetting about it. One last point I'd like to say is that when you look at indicators, for example, let's say even let me give you an example because it's easier to talk about a lagging indicator like a lost time incident or a reportable injury rate or something like that. What is management's intervention? Management's intervention is to eliminate, mitigate, manage, and control the unsafe acts and conditions. But the reality is that we stop there at the key performance indicators. Many leaders don't understand that the key performance indicator actually links back to a key result area. The key result area is the reduction in injuries and human suffering, reduction in disruption and the workforce and sites, reduction in economic losses, etc. And that, in turn, is linked to a value driver of the organization, which is better, socially responsible, and profitable business. So when we are actually constructing KPIs, we need to go back to the value drivers and the key result areas in order then to construct the key performance indicators. And as then Salman and Ahmed indicated, and also Abdullah, then the management intervention, because that gives you then the credibility, as leaders of an organization, because you're not just collecting data for the sake of collecting data. And as long as, life is good, as long as life is good, right? As long as the numbers are green, life is good, man. But as soon as something goes wrong, and leaders are not really asking about that causality and asking how you actually being able to maintain this level of performance. And I think that that's what leaders should do. They should be asking about why we're having this performance. Can we actually maintain this level of performance? And is there real credibility in the data that we're getting? And is there credibility in how we're managing the interventions? Sorry, it was a bit of a long answer, but hopefully that's clear.
Well, it's really good, Walter. It's leading me right into the next question. I want you to be sort of the last person with this because you've also heard it before from some of the other panels. So I'll start with Salman again. But so we've talked about the leading indicators that you liked. I didn't get as much a chance to go around and get to talk to everybody about which ones actually give you that comfort feeling, like that you'd sleep well at night because these reports are all coming in and you're happy that the quantity and the quality is what you're looking for. So if I guess what I want to know is what are those? What are those? And if they weren't going in the right direction, if they were heading in the wrong direction, do you have an example in your career, Salman, where either you or somebody in your department went into the executive room with graphs and spreadsheets and actually got them to make a significant change based on proactive leading indicators? Now, in the one before, the one in India, Dr. Wada said, well, I had a time once where I went out, Larry, and the scaffolding was attached to the side of the building with a rope. So I shut the whole thing down, got it secured properly, and, work resumed. And I said, well, no, Walter, I think we've all got examples where we stopped unsafe work and got it fixed up and let them carry on or whatever. But I'm talking about just going into a boardroom with, numbers and graphs and spreadsheets and getting that executive group to change. Now, Abdullah, you mentioned one that I think is probably near and dear to everybody's hearts in terms of significant change. But again, I haven't yet heard of an example, and that is when you were talking about the, the metal fatigue or the, the mechanical and electrical inspections and things like that, obviously, integrity of vessels and so on. But anyhow, Salman, let me start with you, and that is, for all the talk on leading indicators that we've heard, I mean, in my case, 30 years, do we actually have an example where the leading, like we've all gotten where everything was going up, like the tide and the injuries and the incidents came down. And I'm not trying to suggest that leading indicators aren't valuable. They are. But you have the example where it was going the other way, and you made them stop or something, a significant change. Because again, we've all got examples after a disaster where the company changed, but do you have a proactive one?
So Larry, it's again, as Dr. Wada identified, the key word there is causation. So we can, by looking at leading indicators only, cannot establish if it's going the right way or the wrong way. What you need to do, and we have done this at EGA, is establish not correlations, but causation between the leading indicators and how it influences the lagging indicators. Because at the end of the day, that's the objective. Even if you look at the bow tie model, it's to ensure that the consequences don't take place, and everything in middle are barriers to reach there. So we undertook a study. Now let me explain you a framework which I'm working for my thesis. There are 3 types of training. One type of training is you train people, which is the leading indicator, on systems, safety, permit to work system, working at height system. These are all safety management system. Another one is behavioral training. And I don't want to take too much time because I know we are running out of time, but the last one is training people on equipment. And intuitively, a lot of people like to keep training people on the equipment, especially when they know, it's a critical equipment, keep training people on it. But we found if you overdo that, it starts diminishing returns. So
or begets complacency.
Yeah, so we established, we have years and years of data of training and lagging indicators, and we started doing proper statistical models as to which type of training or which type of leading indicator has the best causation in driving the lagging indicators down. And what we found was it's not the training on safety management system. It does affect, and also on the equipment, it does help. But the one type of training which had a very direct, and you can see really the relationship, is behavioral training. And as a result of those statistics, and I've written a paper on it, you're all welcome to have a look at it. As a result of that, we put more resources on behavioral training of the people. You can keep training them how to start up a turbine, you can keep telling them how to write a permit to work, but at the end of the day, it's the worker at the shop floor. He needs to know what the risks are and what is the negative impact of him not following that. So behavior. So this was a very good example where leading indicator and the causation with the final result, which is a lagging indicator, and how to break that cycle. So I hope that addresses your question.
Well, and obviously, Salman, near and dear to my heart, right? I mean, that, with SafeStart, we right at the very beginning, it's like, we're not teaching you how to operate the machine. That's what your company does. What we're trying to tell you is, once you can operate it really well, you won't need to pay attention to operating it, just like driving. And that's where a lot of the trouble starts, right? Because your mind goes off task, and then if your eyes go with it, well, you're kind of defenseless in that moment. Let me move on to you, Abdullah, though. What leading indicators, like, make you feel comfortable, sleep well at night? And then if they were going the wrong way, do you have any examples where you got the company to make a significant change? I mean, Dr. Watt and I were talking about I don't know how to say this gracefully, but the boat that spilled all the oil by Alaska there, and then the oil company basically transformed, like, operations integrity transformed that company and the way safety was managed from the top to the bottom. But It wasn't based on proactive leading indicators. It was based on a big disaster. So do you have any examples where, you know, something bad, in your opinion, really got averted with proactive leading indicators?
Yes, I think we have discussed about people. For me, the top priority in terms of selecting the right people, developing those individuals, make sure that they are competent for the job that you give them. So putting the right person in the right job, those are, for me, those are the critical, and it doesn't matter what it costs in terms of their development. You have to invest in that one.
Okay.
Let me talk about one of the indicators that we have used. This was even during 90s. We were driving millions of kilometers. One time I calculated like going from Earth to Mars almost 2.5 times. So we
Wow.
were having lots of road traffic accidents. The geographical area that we were covering is huge in terms of a lot of rollovers and a lot of injuries. So we try to train people. It did not work. We installed the rollover bar, even encouraged them to really drive faster because now they are in the rally vehicle. So what we have done, then we say, okay, let's invest, put a big brother next to them in terms of in vehicle monitoring device. So investing millions of dollars in vehicle monitoring device for entire transportation fleets, rollover bar, made a training for any individual, starting from the CEO of the company all the way to the drivers, that they had to take this mandatory training, which is defensive driving, and also desert driving, because it's totally different. So that investment really brought the result that we were looking for. And we reduced at the beginning, we did not reduce much of the incidents, but the severity was reduced. Then slowly, we were monitoring them around the clock. We had a communication with them, and then we achieved the result that really we needed. So that was
Okay,
one
but
of
that was
the.
still, well, Abdullah, though, you were saying that's the result of a whole bunch of vehicle accidents because of how many miles, how many kilometers you were driving, right? So
Yes,
I mean, it's sort of, it's proactive, but it's a bit reactive as well, right? Because the
absolutely.
incidents happen. I mean, if there had been like, if you had have had those because I've been asked to write training modules for those companies that sell these things, and I probably will, but you know, they can monitor acceleration, you know, rapid acceleration, deceleration, hard cornering, as well as idle time and all sorts of other things for fuel efficiency. So if you had that in there, and then you realized, hey, things are going the wrong way, and you had have done an additional intervention, that would have been what I was looking for. But it, you know, it's still like it was reacting to a lot of accidents, right? So,
Correct.
um, and
Yeah,
what
let me
about
give
you,
you.
Ahmed? What do you have any do you have any examples where the favorite leading indicators were all kind of going the wrong way? And like, I mean, you know, I've heard this from employees saying things like, if these guys really knew what was going on, I mean, this place is going to blow up one of these days, Larry, you know? And I'm like, well, have you talked to the guy about it? And I actually had to go and get the guy who ran, I can't explain, a very, very big government organization in Ottawa where, and I mean, this is a whole city block. And I had to take the guy who ran the whole building and take him down to the room where they stored the oxidizers and the flammables in the same room in the cylinders, and said, there's no other way you could blow this building off the ground other than to do what you have done here. And it had been like that for 10 years. And then when he actually saw it, he finally issued the work order for the oxidizers to be stored in a different room. I mean, so sometimes you just got to take the guys down and show them with their own eyes, I think. But do you have any examples yourself, though, where, you know, you managed to get a big change to happen before something bad?
Yes, one of those is loss of containment in the process. One of the leading indicators what we look at is loss of containment from from an asset integrity point of view for both rotary equipment and for fixed equipment. And we had because they correlate directly with the incident that you have with oil spills and fires and leaks and things like that. So we had to look at that very carefully, and we had to go to we have a high-level committee called the Environment, Health and Safety Committee, which meets on a monthly basis, and it's headed by the deputy chief executive of the company. So this committee looks at those KPIs on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, especially the ones that are of concern to the organization. The second one we looked at was the contractor performance in the organization, which is because all of us in the industry these days rely heavily on the utilizing contractor workforce, contractor equipment, and so on and so forth. So we had to go and review the way we manage our contractors from a competency point of view, but also from equipment reliability point of view. So, you know, we had to come up with a competency framework and a trade testing process that ensures that every individual hired by a contractor have the right level of competencies to be working in our facility. And we also had to establish a very rigid and stringent process in checking every piece of equipment and tagging it and making sure that those equipment are in good condition before they are allowed entry into on our facilities. So those two indicators, we had to put a lot of emphasis on them. We had to review very carefully. We had to look at the causes of the situations we had because of equipment reliability, and also had to carefully review our contractor performance when it comes to health and safety. So these are the two ones that were highlighted. Oh, I mean, there are other ones as well, like management of change, closure of action items, you know, competency training attendance, and all, sorry, compliance training attendance. On all those items we have to look at as well. And in addition to the behavioral issues that my brother Salman had mentioned as well, and had to look at the at-risk behaviors in particular. How often do we have at-risk behaviors in our organization? Because we have a behavioral-based safety program, and that monitors the at-risk behaviors on a regular basis. So, in short, we could be sitting here talking about a lot of those issues, but in our organization, we review those on a monthly basis, especially the ones that are of concern, and they get presented to the board also whenever the board meeting is conducted. And each chairman himself is a board member, and he does present those KPIs, especially the ones that are of concern to the board as well.
Okay, well, thanks, Ahmed. I mean, I was speaking about this with Alex Carnival. He's Chief Performance Officer for ETEX. They make building products all over the world, and he's going to be with Dr. Wada and I on the expert panel on leading indicators for this HSE Global virtual conference at the end of the month. And he said, Larry, I mean, 30 years of being in industry, I don't have any personal, you know, like where, you know, I went and shut a plant down or, you know, got a senior manager fired based on leading indicators. He said, but, you know, I do believe that if you get the leading indicators all going in the right direction, the injuries and the incidents and the damages, as Wada was saying, you know, those things don't happen. So I believe in them. And I said, well, just on a human nature point of view, Alex, I said, I mean, I had a number of serious close calls in my motorcycle when I was living in Hollywood, and my dad, who knows nothing about motorcycles and safety, just said to me, well, Larry, you've had a number of close calls on that thing. Maybe you should get rid of it. But I didn't get rid of it until I got run off the road and I got my leg broken, right? So then I got rid of it. So again, after the fact. Now, I love your comment though, Dr. Wada, about the, you know, what is a near miss, because it's already happened. So perhaps the aviation world is more accurate here. And if we look at things like behavioral reports, inspections, and things, maybe those are more a truer leading indicator. But what about you, Wada? What leading indicators give you a comfort feeling, and then what in your experience in terms of sort of proactive change have you heard?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna answer maybe that question again a bit more philosophically. I think what is important is, regardless of the indicators, I've seen a lot of companies produce leading and lagging indicators, and we study them. I want to talk first of all about just process safety management. The process safety management, and Ahmed is an expert in this. The API 754, which is the leading indicators for process safety management. He spoke about loss of primary containment. And then it's a tiered approach towards understanding what is a leading and what is a lagging indicator, but actually having a tiered approach towards this, because I think the industry realized that you can't put everything in the same bucket, because otherwise the management, the leadership team will not pay attention. But if you tier it and you actually explain where where the severity sort of lies, they'll take things a bit more seriously. Second point I'd like to mention, and this actually relates to what Abdullah's talking about with regards to putting in the IVMS, and also what Salman was talking about, and the focus on behavior more than the focus on training people on equipment and the management systems and stuff like that. We've got good management systems in place, procedures are there, but it's just getting people's behavior. And here we link it down to operational excellence, because operational excellence management systems in organizations, and again, Ahmed is an expert in this area, actually creates that operational discipline and measures operational discipline. If you're able to measure operational discipline from a leading indicator point of view, and to see that people are actually conforming, because if you don't have unsafe acts and unsafe conditions, this is actually related or a function of operational discipline, because people don't want to be unsafe. They don't want to create unsafe conditions for the sake of it. I mean, you don't have psychopaths, working in your organization. Well, in most cases,
Yeah.
So when Abdullah spoke about the IVMS system that they put in, but it was sort of a complete system. I'm very well aware of what they did. It was a fantastic case study, really. They put in the IVMS, they trained people, they got, people had to get a license from the company to actually drive company vehicles on company, concession areas, etc. Behavior was monitored, and behavior was also, so people who violated actually got black points. And then if they got black after a certain number of black points, they actually had their, the privilege of driving, on the company, revoked. And if your job, really required you to drive, that would be very, very inconvenient for you, and you could probably get fired. Yeah. So and they were monitoring all of this, and definitely the number of fatalities on the road and in the desert had reduced. So we must find a way of calculating a ratio between our leading and lagging indicators, and understand where that balance comes between our leading and lagging indicators, like an asset test, for example. We have a lot of financial indicators, for example, that can tell you about the health of an organization. It might look like they've got good money, and good money has been made, but they've been making that money not because of operating profits, but because they've been selling off their assets, right? If you use ratios, you're able to actually calculate that as a director, for example, on a board. We need to raise the level of board directors' understanding, where they can actually calculate and do quick asset tests, for example, on different indicators, and saying, well, everything is green here, some things are a bit red there, but it doesn't make sense, because these don't, it doesn't balance out. It doesn't sort of tie up. If you're having very, very good leading indicators, and people are going around, and you've got checklists of people walking around the plant and doing high-vis visits, yet at the same time you're still having LTIs and fatalities on sites, I mean, you could really question the effectiveness of what's going on. So it's actually the effectiveness of things that take place. And I've mentioned this before, that leaders going down to the site and walking around and and taking nice photographs with the workers with their safety helmets and stuff like that, and their polished executive safety shoes is one thing. But actually, the depth of that conversation, the meaningfulness of that conversation that they're having with people on the site is where really they can get very, very good idea of what's going on and an indication, and that's where the leading indicators become effective. So let's talk about the effectiveness of these leading indicators, as opposed to having a bunch of numbers that look nice and then the traffic lights go green and life is good. Life is green, life is good. Yeah,
Well,
I've seen
I
that
think
too many times.
I think that was from all of you, the effectiveness, like the quality, like the substance of all of this was a theme sort of from everybody that was that was really important. And I think it's interesting that I wouldn't want to add up all of the years of experience. I think just between Abdullah and me, we've got we've got an awful lot right there. Over 100 between the five of us for sure in terms of health and safety. So the leading indicators, we're not going to be able to get to all of the questions, ladies and gentlemen. There's six or seven questions that came in. A lot of them I think you've answered were about the observations and supervisors doing observations, and did you rely on that data? And I think, again, as long as they're effective, right? As long as the quality is there, then they become very reliable leading indicators. There was another one about which leading indicators do you find help you get the C-level, the senior level people's attention. Which one, like, and again, Wada, near miss reports, if it was $1 million of potential damage, is going to get anybody's attention. So we might want to try to leave that out of the mix. But what other leading indicators tend to get senior management's attention, or has been really helpful for you in terms of getting them to move or move quickly?
Can I just mention one, if I may?
Please,
yeah, go ahead.
We have lost profit opportunities called LBO, and those are monitored virtually on a daily basis. And have to do with the equipment reliability, plant reliability. And those lost profit opportunities are to do with the productivity of the plant, of course. Those are, again, linked up straight away to the leading indicators from a process safety point of view. And those ones are, as I said, the ones that most of our operating leaders would look at on a regular basis and see, are they green, as Abdullah called them, or are they in the right path, or there's something wrong with them? And they would be investigated straight away, because they do with the plant's productivity and again profitability at the end of the day. But at the same time, they also do with the equipment and plant reliability. So there's a reliability safety issue, but again, it goes into the equipment availability, plant availability, and then eventually profitability as well.
Okay, so the equipment, like if you were a safety practitioner and you were trying to get more support from senior managers, Ahmed, one of the things you'd recommend is to be looking at sort of the equipment reliability, the training, the training for the people on the equipment, and it's certainly like the behavioral aspect of it as well, right? I mean, I think you were saying, Abdullah, that you'd really want to be looking at how does the guy drive the piece of equipment after the training and all the rest of the stuff has gone on, and obviously some reinforcement if it's being done well and so on. What would you say, Salman? For I don't know who asked the question, but I know lots of safety practitioners have trouble getting the support they want from senior managers unless something bad has happened, and then they can get all the money they want. But it required a serious injury or a fatality usually. So what would you advise them in terms of proactive leading indicators if they wanted to get more senior management support?
So again, first, the structure has to be correct. The senior managers should see the practitioners in the organization, the safety professional, as being extremely, not having much distance between the top tier, the C executives. And then when you put the non-closure of the gaps identified, very quickly gets the attention. So in the context that what you are identifying to them, that in your area, so many items, so many gaps have been identified and they're not closed, they're exceeding 2 weeks or 3 weeks, that's big alarm bells and they immediately respond to that. So that's how you.
Excellent, Salman. Thank you. I think that would actually. I mean, that's what I'd recommend. I wouldn't have until I heard you say it today, but I'd be recommending that from now on to people, saying, look, I mean, I think you'd likely get a bit of mileage, get some traction with this one, right? Keep track of that one. Show him the delta of that changing, and when it's getting worse, you should be able to get the support you need. I think that would be very effective. Abdullah, what would you say? I mean, you probably didn't have a lot of trouble with senior managers giving you support for health and safety, but you probably know lots of safety practitioners that struggle. So what would you say to them?
Larry, I think setting the KPI, as I said earlier, we have to link it with the strategy of the organization. Every organization has a different problem. There are common problems, but there are different organizations that requires a different KPIs or different indicators. For me, the way I see it, we have to most of the problems that is known to the organization. So we need to look at those problems. We need to do some trending on those ones and see what are the areas that is going to really bite us hard. So that's where the area that we need to set our KPIs. For example, if you look at oil and gas, as Ahmed and Salman and Wadah, they were saying, your asset integrity, your corrosion management system, your maintenance management system, competency of the people that we have looked at, in terms of the design, in terms of risk assessment. There are certain things that you have to really pay attention to it. Again, we have been very lucky with the support of the management that what we had. I talk about ADNOC, HSE, and asset integrity was a red line. You don't cross it.
Right.
HSE and asset integrity, it does not fall into the budget cycle. I had open books. I had open check once it comes to the HSE requirement. And all of those proactive indicators, whenever we found that the flag is red, we had a full support, and we spend, I'm telling you, we spend millions of dollars in terms of proactively putting the facilities, the systems in place to make sure that we don't have an incident. So my advice to our audience, basically, look at your issues, do the root cause analysis, do the trending, and have just handful of KPIs. Don't get too excited with the numbers, because if the number is huge, then it becomes a paperwork exercise. You dump it on the poor operators, you dump it on the other people, and you're going to distract them from their day-to-day job that they are doing. I think the shift supervisors, the field managers, the workshop managers, if they are out there with their team every day, day in and day out, they move from their office, from behind their computer, and they go to the site, they will identify the issues and they can rectify the right on the spot. So we don't want to, as I say, dashboard is beautiful, indicators are fantastic, but we have to be pragmatic. Our businesses, when you are there, when you are seeing things and immediately you take the corrective action, everybody's going to follow you. If it's going to wait at the end of the month or quarter just to see whether your dashboard is green or yellow or red, that gives you a very false sense of security, and it doesn't get the result that you're looking for.
Oh, Abdullah, thank you. And you actually answered question 4 that came in. So we got that one covered because somebody wanted us to talk about getting the supervisors out there and, you know, and talking with the people and how reliable that was. Because again, there's nothing like seeing it with your own eyes, right? You know, to help motivate you to take the proactive corrective action. Dr. Wada, we are out of time again. I talked to you guys though all night, really. It's almost midnight here, but I don't care. But Dr. Wada, just if you would, to close this out, what would what would you be recommending? What would you be recommending, I guess, in terms of, like, I really like what Abdullah said, and that is, it depends on the industry what leading indicators are going to get their attention and what makes your business tick. But there's also, like he said, some that are common for everybody. So, you know, which ones have you found tend to, like the reliability ones you were mentioning, they tend to get the senior manager's attention the most?
Well, I mean, you already mentioned it, Larry. You said that, you know, usually if there is an incident and something goes wrong, then, you know, funding is made available to try to correct things. I think that again, you know, maybe to summarize some of the key thoughts that sort of connect all our minds as practitioners is, one of them is that we need to define very well what is the leading, what is the lagging indicator, what is the relationship between them, what is the ratio between them. You know, very much linked to awareness and people sort of understanding, and senior leaders and those who are supervisors as well, and understanding that their actions, as Abdullah just said, you know, walking around and actually you know, seeing what's going on in the field, and sort of really understanding if these numbers which are coming in correspond to what they're seeing in the field. And those who have good experience in the field would understand immediately if the numbers were inflated or deflated or whatever. Understanding the causality, you know, is very important. You know, and understanding that when you are actually measuring indicators, you're measuring the health and the strength of those barriers that you put in place, because, you know, we all deal in somewhat, you know, there's always hazards and risks at work. Some industries are riskier than others, and the tolerance and the risk appetite, you know, of companies. I think, you know, when it comes to financial risk, a lot of boards and senior people understand the kind of risks that they're taking, because they're dealing with these kind of things and looking at the numbers and doing a lot of calculation around the numbers. When we go with leading and lagging indicators, we're assuming that a lot of senior people really understand what's behind those numbers and what those numbers indicate. So I think really we need to go back and really think very carefully, because I think we've come to a bit of a plateau, you know, and you know, we've reached the best that we can do with leading and lagging indicators, you know. And I think we really need to have a complete reform of how we look at leading and lagging indicators in the industry, looking at the definitions again, looking at how they link. One last point, you know, the IOGP, and I know that ADNOC, you know, for example, adopted the life-saving rules, or the golden rules. Some companies called it the golden rules. You know, I know Shell adopted it. And again, measuring, you know, the compliance and the conformance and the closeouts, as Salman said earlier on, with regards to, you know, indicators relating to those 10 areas. Those 10 areas didn't just come, or these 10 golden rules just drop out of the sky. You know, there was a lot of research done over the last 10, 20 years of all the incidents that have happened within, especially the oil and gas, and specifically the upstream and sort of midstream. And they realized that these are the causes of these incidents, and they said, okay, well, let's focus on those 10 areas. So that is a good example of proactive thinking and leading indicator thinking. We use the leading indicator data. We have a lot of data from the industry, but we need to be honest with ourselves. You know, we need to really understand those leading indicators and understand what we need to do in order to make our industry is a lot safer. And we need to educate, and I cannot stress on this enough. We really need to educate senior management and leaders and directors of boards and stuff like that. What do these numbers mean, and what is it that they can do in order to make things safer? Because they have a big influence. They have a real big influence. And I just wanted to close with those ideas. I wanted to thank you again, Larry, for having us here, and I wanted to thank Salman, Abdullah, and Ahmed for their time. It's fantastic, and I'm looking forward to the next one, inshallah. Over to you, Larry.
Yeah, no, me too. And I've got to close out, but really, I would love to talk to you guys all night. Dr. Wada, again, it's the next series, but just culture and accountability. How do you balance all of that? That is definitely one in the next series. But 3 weeks from today, everybody, at exactly the same time, 10 o'clock a.m. in the Emirates, we are going to do zero harm. Should you have zero harm in your mission statement or not? And this is one of the things that actually, this and leading indicators were one of the things that actually motivated me to put this whole expert panel series together, because I've listened to a lot of academics go on and on about that you shouldn't have zero harm in your mission statement. And I've also heard a lot of safety professionals say, I don't feel like celebrating, even though I only went to 2 funerals instead of 5 this year. So just lots of interesting stuff to talk about with the next one. So hopefully you can all join us for that. And then the one after that, we'll be talking about felt leadership, and can you actually get that message and that commitment right down to the shop floor. So please join us for the next one, 3 weeks from today, 10 o'clock in the morning. And all of you, thank you very much for your comments and for your insight. And again, Dr. Wada, thanks for putting all of this and the panel together. Okay, everybody. Well, we'll see you in 3 weeks. Thanks again.
Yeah. Good night.
Bye. Good night. Yeah.
Yes. Good night, Larry. Okay. Assalamu.
Bye, everybody.